So how many times, let's say, would you call a lead? I know that Mike often says 3 times and throw it away, but do you adhere to that rule?
It depends on location of the house and the price point. If the price point is over $1 million, I will call often and for a long time. Some leads I will work 1 or 2 years and then the seller will list with me. If it's under $300,000 and it's an hour's drive for me, I will call 3 times and then I'll stop.
What I do is if it's really a nice listing, what I'll do is 2 weeks down the road or a week down the road, I'll call all those old leads again. Because sometimes they get bombarded right in the front end. And I feel like if you give them a couple weeks, if you haven't been successful reaching them in the front end, keep calling back. Yeah.
You know, I do call the expireds in the morning, but then I call them in the afternoon. And then with your system, with FSBOs, it's live. So, you know, I'll look up the FSBOs, you know, when they pop up also. Lead follow-up, I do lead follow-up every 30 minutes per day.
So according to my coach, Coach Larry, I'm supposed to call him 3 times that day to try and get in touch with him. So I'll start out first thing in the morning. You know, you will probably get about 5 or so. Call him at noon and then call him right before I leave the office.
How many times will you actually call?
I should be doing better, but I only call him twice. I mean, twice within the day, right?
You call them the next day?
Oh, yes. I add them up. Yeah, that comes in my next prospecting session.
I don't always do everything Mike says. I can't answer yes to that, but I do call him like at least once or twice.
Okay.
5, 6 times.
During the day, I'll 1 to 2 times a day. Probably could be a little bit more aggressive. However, I get into my database, and I honestly haven't been working the full 8 hours a day. So that's one other thing that I've learned here. Just imagine if I put the full 8 hours in if I didn't have an appointment in the afternoon. And one of the other things I've learned here, attack the database. Big attack the database.
Okay. So let's say in your prospecting, you get a listing presentation.
Yeah.
You send a pre-listing package?
Yeah, I do, always. Always send a pre-listing package. My associate, Michelle, will get the pre-listing package ready. We put it in a beautiful box and have everything in there, a video book, which we do a little bit differently. So that's another thing that differentiates myself. You can get that, and I can share that info if you're interested. But it's beautiful if you do any video, that will show up also to the client. Besides, you'll have, you know, your pre-listing package with your marketing, as well as, you know, the comps, etc., for that client to review.
Do you send out a pre-listing package?
Yes, they get a Mike Ferry pre-listing, you know, what he recommends, yes.
Once we set an appointment, I'm going to go to the pre-qualification right away. Depending on the conversation that we had, depending how motivated they were at that moment, and whether or not we had a great conversation, I can go into the pre-qual right away, or I do it later that day. Once I go through the pre-qual, whether it be at that moment or later, then a pre-listing package will be sent out to them. And normally, I personally like to send the pre-listing package as a hardcover, customized, that we put together, just like MFO teaches us, and we just send it over. Most of the time, because everything is so local, I personally drive it over and I drop it off.
Okay, fantastic.
I always send out a pre-listing package.
Do you do it by email? Do it by regular mail? Do you hand deliver it?
No, I hand deliver it. So what I decided was that we needed to do something to differentiate ourselves from everybody else. So I'm going to go back to Coach Larry again. He had all of us that he coached send him a pre-list packet. And he showed me this guy that had this box. I thought it was so cool, and it has vellum and has a little seal. And so that's what we did. We bought this little 1-inch box. We put everything in, we seal it. We have everything that looks super professional. So most of the time, I'm gonna tell you, I can get people to sign right away without spending much time there because of the pre-list box. So it's very powerful.
Most of the time we do email it, the listing packet. All our information's in there. You know, that's what we do with the pre-listing packet.
So I pre-qualify all of my appointments all the time, and then I put together a pre-listing packet that Mike has. You know, it includes the net sheet, includes some recent comparable sales, our marketing plan of action, and the listing paperwork that we use. And we drop it off to their house, preferably. Sometimes we email it, but I don't find that is. It's good to email if they're out of town, but if they're there locally, we drop it.
Most of the time I do, yes, once I get the appointment.
Okay.
And I tell them it's coming.